to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest Mike Kimmons, Certified Athletic Administrator, currently retired former athletic administrator at Adamsville High School in Adamsville, Tennessee. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience here in the U.S. and across the world where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, those types of things.
I grew up in Ripley, Tennessee, and went to Ripley High School, played football, loved baseball, but wasn't good enough to play. Went on to the University of Tennessee at Martin, started my college career, and I was one of those students that I used to laugh about when they said that sometimes people get asked not to come back because lack of studying. And I was one of those people. So after one quarter, they said, please don't come back. And so I went to community college and got my 2-year degree in criminal justice. My plan was to go into Secret Service or the FBI. And I guess it was a blessing that it didn't work out. I went to the University of Memphis to get my bachelor's in criminal justice, but had trouble with college Spanish. So that's all I lack, having a bachelor's in criminal justice. So I went back to Martin, where they were glad to accept me. Went a year and graduated with my educational degree. And as you can say, the rest is history. Went to Ripley and started teaching. Last school I wanted to go to was my home school to begin with, but that's who would hire me. And spent 15 years there. And 1991, I became the assistant athletic director by accident. I know people say, how did you accidentally become AD? Well, or assistant AD. Our track meet got rained out. The AD felt like he needed to be at the track meet when they made it up. They were fixing to have the first state AD conference in 91 in Tennessee. And so he appointed me assistant AD and sent me to the athletic directors conference. And after that time, I continued on, and I guess I only missed one Tennessee AD conference between 91 and when I retired in 13. And I've continued to go back on occasion to the Tennessee AD conferences, where I have many great friends, and I've spoke at the AD conference and so on. And like I said, people in that association have been very important in my life.
Well, let me ask you this. So Ripley High School is, I assume, in
Ripley, Tennessee.
Okay. And close to what major city?
An hour north of Memphis.
Okay.
We're halfway between Mississippi and Kentucky, right there on the Mississippi River.
Okay. So let me ask you about, did you have a chance as a youth to play any youth sports, football, basketball, baseball, etc.?
I played junior high basketball and played baseball in the summer. Of course, we didn't have youth league football at that time. But then, like I said, when I got into high school, played football in junior high and then in high school. And then my athletic career was coming to an end. But when I started coaching football, I also got involved in umpiring high school and junior college baseball, which became my love for a while. And spent 33 years umpiring baseball, and it was good to me. We got to work 8 state high school tournaments during those 33 years, and then when I moved to Mississippi, I put the baseball umpiring behind me.
So you spent over 3 decades umpiring. Talk about
Yes.
any interesting experiences you had that way.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of got called a lot of things by lots of mamas. And but it was good to me. I made a lot of friends, lifelong friends, through the umpiring association, and just like any of us, as we get older, younger people call and ask for advice, and I still put on some umpiring clinics when I ask, and try to help out the young people.
Let me ask you about some of the mentors and leaders you had in your life, both as a young man and then once you got involved as an AD.
Well, obviously, my parents were a big influence on me. They were not athletic people, but they supported anything that I did. And, if every ball game I guess I ever played in, they were there. Other mentors, Richard Carroll, who started the Tennessee Athletic Directors Association, who passed away just a few years ago suddenly. He was a great mentor. He's the one that got me involved in the NIAAA. If it wasn't for him, I would have never gone to that first conference back in 1996. Other mentors, which these are people that you'll know. Of course, you, Andy Childs, Bob Rossi, Bob Armstrong, Dr. David Hoke, which those all ought to ring a bell to you, all on the awards committee.
Yeah.
Great friends to me. And, if it wasn't for you, I would still be the guy sitting on the back row at the national conference, going to the session, last one in, first one out, and walking the halls, wondering what's everybody doing here. So I can't thank you enough for what you've done. I mean, you've changed my life in many ways, in ways that you'll never know, by asking me to be on the awards committee when someone else had to drop out because of the Iraqi war. If you remember.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. You're too kind, but I certainly appreciate that. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question right now. Mike, what's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Biggest failure, I guess, was thinking that everybody would listen to everything I had to say. You learn real quick in this business. You may be right, but people sometimes don't think you're right. And so I had to become a better listener. And it taught me to, listen, take other people's opinions, and then share with people what I thought, instead of just coming out and telling them what I thought to begin with.
Okay, let me ask you, let's delve a little bit more into your background before you became an AD. So just a teacher, were you coaching? Obviously, you were umpiring all that time, or?
Yeah, for 15 years, I coached football and did the umpiring. And then, like I said, and I started in 84 teaching and coaching. And then in 91, became the assistant AD, as I told you, because of the rained out track meet. It's funny how the Lord has ways of taking care of things and putting you in the right place at the right time. And I'm definitely a recipient of that. And a year later, the AD took the principal's job in another school. So I became the AD, back when I made a whopping $500 supplement for being the AD. And most ADs probably can't relate to that. And so I was there for 15 years, and then had the chance to go to Adamsville as assistant principal and athletic administrator. Of course, they had named a coach, or the head coach was typically the athletic director, which I've never understood how you can do that. Coach on Friday night and be the athletic director and deal with everything you have to at home and road ball games. And
right.
So my title was athletic administrator, which I loved doing, and did it for the 15 years that I was at Adamsville. and then retired.
Perfect.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this, uh, and something I didn't know about Adamsville, and I want you to share it with our audience. Why is Adamsville so famous? I know the first time you told me I had no idea, but I'll turn it over to you.
Well, Adamsville is a one stoplight town. Uh, Very small town. They say there's 1,000 people who live there, but I never found them all. And so just a very small place. And that is where the legendary Sheriff Buford Pusser um, lived. And for the people who are not familiar with Buford Pusser, he, during the end of his, or after he was, his career as sheriff was over after 6 years, 3 2-year terms. They decided to make a movie about him, and it's called Walking Tall. And then he was going to play himself in Walking Tall Part 2, and he was killed, which they think it was a mob hit, which, I mean, they'll never prove it. And so Joe Don Baker played the part of Buford Pusser, and in the first movie. Then they made the second movie of Walking Tall and the third movie of Walking Tall, and Bo Swenson, I believe, was the actor's name that played Buford in Part 2 and Part 3. Of course, his daughter owned a restaurant there in town. We had his granddaughter in class or in school at Adamsville. So I guess you'd say that was the claim to fame, was Buford Pusser. And then a few years ago, you know how time gets away, they were going to make another Walking Tall with The Rock playing Buford Pusser. And it was I guess you could say, loosely based
Loosely
on
based.
and so I guess you could say 4 movies were made, called Walking Tall, based off Buford Pusser's life.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I found that fascinating when we talked about that years ago. Let's talk for a minute about the job of athletic administrator, AD, and talk about the changes you've seen since you first became one.
Changes, I guess, are probably the money that ADs make now in lots of places. I know a lot of places ADs now make almost as much or more than the head coaches. When I first started, and probably when you may have started, it was sort of an afterthought. You taught all day, and did AD work during your planning period or after school? And now I know some of the schools in my area have full-time athletic directors, unheard of back in the day. And I think that's a big change. And I think athletic directors, I don't know if they get more respect or less respect now. It's hard to say. It depends on who you talk to. Sometimes people say if the athletic director says it, that's the way we're going to do it. And not, of course, I've been in situations where people want to argue with you, that saying that I knew nothing about athletics and, all that stuff that we all hear at times.
Yeah, certainly. That's certainly true. So let's delve a little bit more now into, you talked about one of your mentors, Richard, that got you involved in the Tennessee organization. So go a little bit more in depth into that, and then how you got involved in the NIAAA, and then talk about your first conference in '96, which would have been Orlando, I believe.
That's correct. Well, in '95, I never heard of the NIAAA, to be honest with you. And in 1995, Richard Carroll told me, he said, next year, get ready. I want you to go to the national conference with me. We're going to host the following year after Orlando in '97. We're going to host, and I need you to help me. And I'm thinking, why do you need old Mike Kimmons to help you? And so he sort of tricked me into going. I went to Orlando, really enjoyed it. And I think since 1996, I think I've only missed 4 conferences. And and again, I was sort of the back row guy until you came along and asked me to pinch hit for another AD on the awards committee, which I grew so much during that time, just being around the other ADs. And, David Hoke and I talk on occasion. He's written several books. He calls or emails and asks what I think about this certain book. And, and I give him my opinion. So that's how my involvement started with the NIAAA, was getting ready for the national conference. And I was on the host committee in 96. And then when Tennessee hosted in 07, I was the chairman of the host committee. And then in, I guess, 2011, I received the DSA at the national conference in Indianapolis. So when I throw this in, I think in about 04, I won the Tennessee, or the award given in Tennessee for the State Award of Merit that comes through the NIAAA. And also next week, well, I guess by the time this is broadcast, it will have already happened. In January, I'm going to receive the Distinguished Service Award from the state of Mississippi. I've been teaching LTC classes in Mississippi for probably the last 15 years, even when I was still in Tennessee. Lonnie Tillman had called me and asked me if I would come down and teach, and I've been doing that, the end of my Tennessee career, and then ever since I've gotten here. And somebody asked me the other day, how many people have won the State Award of Merit in more than one state? And I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know if anybody does know the answer to that, but I'm sure it's a small group of people that have won it twice. And I feel honored to be getting that award at the end of January.
Well, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Let me talk a little, or have you talk a little bit more about being on the host committee in 97 and then being chair of the host committee. I obviously don't know what goes into one of those, but share the amount of work that goes into being a host committee chair.
Well, we met with Frank Kovaleski, who was in charge at that time, and he came down to meet with the host committee and then meet with Richard and myself. And they told us what they expected, and then asked us, or they gave us a list of things and said, which of these can you do? If you don't think you can do it, we'll find somebody that will do it. And of course, everything they threw at us, we said, yes, we can do it. We can do it. So, as far as getting flower arrangements for all the tables at the banquet, we had a singer sing before the banquet, at the night banquet, sang Christmas songs for the people, before the banquet started. And we had gifts to give away at the spouses breakfast. And, there was lots of little things, but we got a lot of our ADs involved. Again, people who had never been involved wanted to be involved. And so really, on my part, I guess it was sort of like being the leader of the circus, just telling people, I'm putting it in your hands. And they took off and did a great job. Had a great group of people working for me.
Well, let me then go back to 97. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. So the regular listeners will have to forgive me. So 97 is my first conference of the NIAAA. I get to the Opryland. It's maybe 9:30 at night. I have to go to the CAA test administrators to become a test administrator the next morning. The place is huge, as you well know. I walk down the night before. I go through all these aisles. I get there. It's like 20 minutes to get there. So I know where I'm going in the morning. Get up the next morning. I go there. And then I meet someone and I say goodbye. They say, where are you going? I said, I'm going back to my room. It's right here. He said, well, no, you can just go this way. It's about 3 minutes this way. And so that's, it was the second time I got to Opryland before I knew my way around. But my memory of that first conference is when I met you out in the food court area. And of course, I had no idea it was your second conference. I thought you were like this big time expert. Of course you were, because you were obviously on the committee that ran the conference. But I think maybe my first pin exchange was there. So let me have you talk about that and the amount of pins you have, because you have more pins than I have, and I have a bunch of pins.
Well, I guess it started out the year before in Orlando. I didn't know about pin trading, and a couple of people I guess they felt sorry for me. And I think I came home with 4 pins from Orlando. Didn't have anything to trade. Of course, talked to our leadership and said, we've got to get some pins made. They said, we have pins. And I said, where are they? Well, they're back in my office. I didn't know you wanted any. And, we have that humorous back and forth. Well, I didn't know I was supposed to ask. So I came loaded for Bear in 97. And I believe that was my first pen swap with you. First time I've actually traded a pen was with you. And let me show you this. See if you can. Is that in focus for you?
Yes.
Okay. I finally finished this, I guess, with your help last year getting the Alaska pen. But so that's the map. I have all 50 of the states now. We've got Alaska. And then total, I have over 700 different pens. I display mine in cases, alphabetical order by, states. And I think I counted up. Let me look right here just a second. I think I've got 11 or 12 pens from Utah. And amazingly, I don't know who I got these from. I got 21 pens from Jordan High School.
There you go.
Your old high school.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of my collection. It's come from you. And then obviously every year, if I'm looking for something and you've got more than one, you've been gracious to share with me. And something I learned early on, if people come up asking for a pen and they don't have one to trade, I'm going to give them one. That's the way people with me when I started. Another one of my first pens that I got in Nashville. And it's funny, my wife says I'm crazy, but most of these pens, I can look at them and tell you a story about them, who I got them from or what we were doing. And one of my first ones after the one from you, Harold Irwin from West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
That was my second pen. And, and that's in 1997. Why do I remember that? I just do. And of course, I've gotten a lot from, Jeff Kurtz and others that, it seemed like there used to be a lot of big pen collectors. I guess a lot of them are retired. You just don't, they're getting harder and harder to find. Of course, I didn't attend the conference in Austin, but I will be back in Florida next year.
Right.
But
that pen story is awesome. You can't, obviously, I've got my screensaver in back of me, but in back where I'm sitting, I have a map that's probably 3 feet by 4 feet. That's a U.S. map. But so I've got, well, for example, Tennessee, I probably got 9 or 10 Tennessee pins in the Tennessee state. And of course, I've got my Utah pins, and a lot of the states have more than one pin. Virginia, for example, Ohio, etc., the same that you have. And so I just think it's a great way to meet people and
no doubt
talk at the conference. Let me have you talk a little bit more now. You mentioned this a couple of times earlier, but you did spend some time on the awards committee. I remember those days back when I was the chair. So any interesting stories you have to share about being on the awards committee?
Well, it was such a learning time. I learned so much from, sitting with the same guys. Of course, obviously, I guess a third, or maybe not a third, but we had people rotating off each year and others coming on. Fran Witten from Massachusetts is still a good friend of mine. We always hook up at the national conference, and Scott Nordy, from Washington. And then, like I said, David and those others that I mentioned. Last year, I was fortunate enough to win the door prize to go to Hershey, Pennsylvania. And of course, Holly's the one that presented the certificate for the trip to Hershey, which, again, awards committee. So, just friendships that people just can't understand unless they've been a part of it.
What's one common myth about being an athletic director that you'd like to debunk to the general public?
People think we have an unlimited budget. Now, I don't know at Jordan High School, y'all may have had all the money in the world, but at Ripley and Adamsville, everything was based off our gate revenue. And then by the time you pay officials and other things, there's not a whole lot of money there. And I think that's the biggest myth. They think we come into these jobs and have all sorts of money to spend. I mean, we want to do everything we can. And of course, sometimes fans don't understand, parents don't understand, even coaches don't understand, why I can't get something new every year. And of course, we were, like I said, at Adamsville, we had about 400 kids in the school. And so we weren't a big school, and there's not a lot of revenue base in the community. And so we have to do, and I think a lot of schools just have to do with, with what you have. And I think to me, that was the biggest myth.
What's the favorite part of your job when you were an AD?
Being around the kids, and not necessarily the parents, but being around the kids. And now I did some things. I'll throw this out. Going back to my first state AD conference, I was sitting there with pen and paper writing down every word that was said by everybody, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Now, a lot of times I go to conferences, I don't see anybody writing, which, like somebody told me once, don't learn everything this time. That way you have to go back next year and learn some more. Mm-hmm. But there was a coach or AD who said that his part of his budget went to buying note cards and stamps. He said, I don't email anybody. He said, I write to people. So when I became principal, when I was, came down to Mississippi, we had a weekly paper, and every time a kid's picture was in the paper, I don't care if it was athletics, drama club, whatever. If their picture was in the paper, I cut it out, wrote them a note, and mailed it to them. Didn't hand it to them, I mailed it to them. And then, of course, I was an outsider coming from Tennessee to Mississippi, and I wasn't the community's first choice. But after that started happening, when I had people turn against me, I had that group of parents that came to bat for me. And it's amazing the power of the pen. I always heard that story before, but and of course I know it's easier to text somebody, but I went out and had some stationery made, note cards made with our school logo on them, and a roll of stamps. And, like I said, I don't care who it was or how short the story was or how long the story was, they all got the same. Or if I just heard of something that somebody did, I'd write them a note. Thank you for doing what's right. And it's amazing the benefits that came from that. And
Great
I learned
job.
that at the first AD conference in 1991.
Great job. Thanks for sharing that. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first being, you've got 2 suggestions for a brand new AD, and they need to follow Mike's suggestions in order to become a success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
You got to be a good listener. Listen to what people have to say. Relationships and friendships. Like you and I know I can call on you at any time. I hope you can call on me at any time. I should have mentioned Roger Dixon a minute ago. Roger Dixon I don't know if he's from North Carolina or South Carolina. He's been in both. But we talk several times a year, just keeping up with each other. And I was, I didn't mention this earlier, when I was president of the Tennessee ADs Association, I said, I'm going to enjoy these 2 years. So I went to the conference in 6 different states just to see what other people were doing, trying to get ideas. And Roger sort of took me under his arm at the North Carolina conference, along with Roy Turner and of course Daryl Nance in South Carolina. We've become great friends.
Sure.
We met on the sidewalk in Anaheim the day before the conference started. Him and his wife, and I think it was a pen swap that took place there on the sidewalk in Anaheim.
There you go.
And so, like I said, the relationships you make with other people go a long ways. Like Dr. David Hope, we had good conversation in Orlando. We went out and ate in Phoenix, across from the hotel when we were out there, and just the friendships. I wish I had a list of all the friends I've made through the AD Association. It'd be a very long list, that's for sure.
That is well said. Let's finish with this one. Mike, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Oh, I don't know. Like I said, it's what else could I have learned? I'm sure there's a lot, but I am very satisfied with my time in NIAAA. Another one, I'll tell you this funny story. Back when they started the LTC classes, Jim Watkins came and met with the 6 of us in Tennessee, trying to get us, trying to promote it, because I think Nashville was the first year they taught LTC at the conference. And he told the 6 of us, he said, if you ever want to come to a real AD conference, you come to Kentucky and I'll take care of you. Well, I sort of folded that up on that mental piece of paper and stuck it in my back pocket. And that was, I guess, 96 or 97. And then in 2014, I called Jim. I hadn't talked to Jim and since that time, that trip out to eat supper in 96 or 97. I said, Jim, I know you don't know me, but I don't know if you remember this offer or not, but you said that you'd take care of us. I was just wanting comped into the conference. I was going to pay everything else. Well, Jim took care of me. He paid for my hotel, my conference restoration, and he was right. It was a good one, and I enjoyed it so much. I went back the next 2 years on my nickel. And so again, one of those friendships. That's where I met Phil Rising, and he was great to me. He didn't know me from Adam, but we became great friends at those years at the Kentucky conference before he climbed the ladder to where he is today.
That is awesome. Thanks for sharing that. On that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Mike Kimmons, Certified Athletic Administrator, currently retired former athletic director at Adamsville High School. Thanks for being on the podcast, Mike.
Thank you, Mar. Appreciate your time.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.